A Bitcoin ETF seems to be the hope and dreams for many investors at the moment, believing it'll be the factor that sends Bitcoin well and truly into new all-time highs, into the hundreds and thousands of dollars per Bitcoin. However, on the contrary, many believe that it will have minimal impact, that it won't affect the price overly, and that those people that are, BlackRock and everything that are going to introduce these Bitcoin ETFs have already scooped up the Bitcoin and that the price has already been adjusted. Now, the question is this true? Either way, is Bitcoin going to pump to, $150,000 because of it, or is it going to have minimal impact? That's what we're going to get into in today's video. But before we start, I'm going to have to shill a little bit here. Remember to subscribe. We're at 141 subs. I've been posting weekly, so if you guys are enjoying this content, remember to like, subscribe, comment anything that could help the channel, any video ideas, any support, any, whatever you want to say, feel free to comment it down below. But let's start off with the Bitcoin ETF versus a gold ETF. So the main example that we have to compare to is a gold exchange traded fund. Now, the gold exchange traded fund, the first one in the world, was launched, on the 28th of March 2003 on the Australian Securities Exchange. So this was the very first gold ETF that was launched. And then just a year later, or just slightly over a year later, on November 18th, the US launched their own gold ETF. Now, what effect did this have on the price of gold? So, are the ETFs something that we can look at and say that they do definitively have an impact on the price of an asset? Well, if we have a look at gold, you can see the two lines on the screen here. If we zoom out a little bit just for a little bit more context, there we go. Now, what are these two lines? Well, that is March 03, so March 2003, when the Australian ETF, or gold ETF, was launched. And then the other one is November 2004, which is when the US launched their gold ETF. Now, maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's sheer luck, whatever, but there's no doubt that the gold ETF was the beginning of a massive gold bull market, undeniably. If we have a look here, gold bottomed, roughly, you could say in 99 or 01, and then a couple years later, the bull market really began, and this was a huge bull market for gold. If we have a look at the price and date range, this is from the second low, we've got about a 650% move in, over 10 years of time. So you can see the end was about August 2011, and the beginning was about April 01. So over 10 years of a bull market for gold. Now, is that going to be the exact same for Bitcoin? I don't think it'll be 10 years, but if we have a look and compare this, if we put this into Bitcoin, a 650% move, well, it only takes us to $120,000 Bitcoin. So that is quite lackluster. I know what you're thinking. Wow, the gold ETF spawned one of the largest bull markets for gold that we've ever seen. So now let's get ready. We're about to see the biggest Bitcoin bull market ever, a 650% move. Now, there's more to this, of course. So the next thing I want to look at, okay, so why? So I would say 650% is a very low projection. I think a lot of people expect Bitcoin to go higher than that. So a gold or a Bitcoin ETF should send Bitcoin far, far higher than $120,000. Now let's have a look at something. Let's have a look at the gold to money supply. So this is interesting here. So now what we have on screen is the gold over the money supply. So basically the price of gold divided by however much money there is in the markets. And what you can see here is that gold is pretty terrible, the simplest way to put it. You can see that ever since 81, 87, even 96, basically this thing has been losing value the whole time it has been on the markets. If you are holding gold, you are losing money to the dollar. You'd be better off just holding US dollars over gold. And you can see here that it has just been terrible, except for when the gold ETF was introduced. So you can see that around here we've got, I think this is March 03, I've started this. So in March 2003, that is the first gold ETF that was launched in Australia. So you can see that was launched here, and then from there we had a nice 250% rally. Now that is against the money supply. But in the grand schemes of things, this was really nothing. This was nothing but a relief rally, it seems. I mean, if you looked at this chart and you said, what crypto token is this? You'd be saying, some random shitcoin. I don't know. It could be ICP or something. I don't know. Just throwing out. I remember seeing the ICP chart looked pretty much like this, and that this little run up here was nothing but a short-term relief rally, maybe off some positive news. And that's kind of what we have here for gold. Is that okay? So gold ran up 650% against the dollar, which is awesome. But in the grand scheme of things, compared to the actual money supply, it was nothing but a relief rally. Gold is a weak asset, and the gold ETF, was basically nothing but a short-term spike in the grand scheme of things. And you can see that ever since the top, it has just continued to just depreciate and lose value. Maybe it's bottoming. You could maybe make that argument. I'm sure there's people who are saying that, but overall, there's nothing but, continuous losing of value. There's very little periods of time here. As you can see, the green line across where the value is right now, there's very little times where gold has been lower. But if we compare this to something like Bitcoin versus the money supply. Now, this is Bitcoin versus the money supply. It is basically the opposite picture, right? It is, if we just quite simply, oh, hang on, gonna have to refresh here. So Bitcoin is essentially the opposite picture, right? So what we have here is, turn our magnet off, is higher highs, higher lows. You can see higher highs, higher lows. And basically it is looking very strong. It is continuing to gain value against the money supply. So not only is it gaining value in terms of the US dollar value, but it's also, beating out things like inflation and everything considerably. It's continuously been able to do that. So what we have here is basically a shitcoin that has, I don't want to throw any gold bugs under the bus here, but I mean, the data speaks for itself. This has not been performing well compared to something that has clearly since its introduction been performing very, very well. Now, just for context, we'll compare this to the S&P 500, because what you generally expect to see with a money supply to an asset is that it's kind of just going to stay in a range, right? Is that you're going to have a range because obviously, let's say that's a rough range, right? So obviously you're going to be in a range. It's not like the S&P 500 is, going to somehow just scoop up more and more and more of all of the money on earth. People isn't just, money being thrown into it. Obviously, it is kind of the increase of the S&P 500 is more so a reflection of essentially the inflation and the devaluing of the dollar and the exponential growth of the money supply, right? If that makes sense. So the S&P 500 grows because the money supply grows, right? And that's kind of seen here, is that we kind of just would expect that there's going to be bull markets, there's going to be bear markets, it's going to be bull markets, etc., right? It doesn't really matter. You just want to be, basically buying general bottoms, selling general tops, and essentially, it's just going to keep up with the money supply. But what we can see on Bitcoin here is that it's continuing to grow and grow. So Bitcoin has proven that it is a far stronger asset than gold, just based off the money supply, obviously, as we looked at. So what we would expect is that a Bitcoin ETF would have a similar effect on Bitcoin, right? It would could be the catalyst of a big bull market, but the percentage that we're going to gain, because Bitcoin is clearly a far stronger asset, we would expect that its bull market is going to be far stronger. If you look at tokens like Doge, probably not Dogecoin actually. That's one of the few good altcoins. But if you look at a lot of altcoins, they're gonna have good run ups, from time to time. But generally, they're not going to be able to keep up with things like Bitcoin because it is just so strong. So what we could expect here is that instead of 650%, we could have a far larger bull market because Bitcoin, as we have a look here, okay, it's going to gold increase 250% to the money supply. So if Bitcoin were to increase, 250% to the money supply, that could put Bitcoin, who knows where? Who knows where that could put Bitcoin? 250%. It's actually only here because the money supply, obviously, it keeps increasing, right? But it could put it 300%, 350%. It could put it anywhere 400% higher. Who knows, right? But what that's going to do as the money supply increases is it means it's going to be like exponential for the actual price of Bitcoin. So it could send Bitcoin, 800, 1,000. It could send it who knows where because obviously the money supply grows. Bitcoin is growing faster than the money supply because of the ETF. And obviously Bitcoin compared to the money supply is already such a strong asset. So where this sends us is, really unknown. I can't really tell you what price it's going to go to. But what I will say is this 650%, I expect that to be essentially the absolute minimum, in my opinion, for the next bull market. Assuming an ETF is announced, that 650% will be the absolute minimum because obviously just based off this chart here, which is the Bitcoin to money supply and the gold to money supply, clearly Bitcoin is a stronger asset. So if an ETF was introduced, we would essentially expect it to be at least 650%. Now, of course, that was over the course of 10 years for gold, which is kind of crazy. It takes us out to, where does it take us out to? Somewhere around over here. Now, of course, that is a long time, but Bitcoin runs on shorter cycles. So, I would still say 650% in this cycle at some point, maybe even 2 cycles away, who knows? But 650% the absolute minimum because Bitcoin is clearly stronger. Now, last but not least, the obvious other reason as to why Bitcoin can grow far more than that 650% we were talking about is that Bitcoin has a very small market cap. If you can see on the chart here, we've got gold. It's sitting at currently around, I think this is like 13 trillion dollars in market cap, which is absolutely massive. And obviously Bitcoin, it hit about $1 trillion at the peak, and it's currently at about $600 billion. So there is clearly far more growth in terms of growth potential because obviously Bitcoin is such a low market cap, and obviously, as we said before, the Bitcoin chart to the money supply is so much stronger than gold. So whilst the ETF for gold was nothing but a relief rally in the grand scheme of things, it seems, only time will tell. Maybe it was the start of another massive bull market. Who knows, right? But obviously, Bitcoin is so much stronger on the charts, and the market cap is so much lower. So that 650% that we are talking about, roughly $120,000 Bitcoin, I would say that would, in my personal opinion, obviously not financial advice, I think that is the minimum of where we go to in this cycle. So once we hit that target, we'll be looking at starting to sell Bitcoin because we've hit our minimum target, and then we can reset afterwards. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully this video helped you out trying to see how big a Bitcoin ETF could be. It could be massive, or it could be a nothing burger. I could be completely wrong with this. We never know until we see it. So fingers crossed it happens soon enough so we can all make tons and tons of money. Anyways, guys, if you did enjoy, remember, like and subscribe. We are at 141 subs. Let's push it up. Let's try and get to 150, I reckon. That would be awesome. Anyways, I do have referral codes down below as well for Coinspot, Swyftx, a few different Australian exchanges, as well as Koinly. It is tax time here in Australia, so if you're looking to do your crypto taxes, feel free to use my Koinly referral code down below. They'll help you with your taxes, get a tax report, and they'll sort it all out for you. Anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.